podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host in this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, what photography means to them, and to dig a little deeper into the way they think about their photography. Jon Norris is a seasoned landscape photographer whose approach blends technical precision with thoughtful artistic intent. First picking up a camera at 14, Jon's creative path has been shaped by his background as a former aerospace engineer, giving him deep understanding of both the mechanics and the meaning behind an image. Based in Southern California, Jon spends much of his time exploring and photographing places like Joshua Tree National Park. His philosophy centres on slowing down, learning to truly see, and building the confidence to create images that feel personal rather than camera-driven. For Jon, landscape photography is not about chasing icons, but about developing consistency, intention, and a visual voice that reflects the photographer behind the lens. In this conversation, Jon discusses balancing a demanding corporate career in aviation with a long-term passion for photography, eventually reshaping his priorities around creativity and personal fulfillment. He shares insights into teaching workshops, navigating increasing restrictions in protected landscapes, and why he chose to step away from social media to reconnect with authentic creative practice. Jon also explores his growing interest in medium format film, the value of setting personal photographic goals, and the responsibility photographers carry to protect the wild places that inspire their work. His perspective is grounded, reflective, and refreshingly honest. I hope you enjoyed the show.
G'day, Jon. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How's your day?
Hey, Grant. Good to be here.
Thanks for agreeing to come on the show. I asked you on the show because I saw something interesting on your Instagram feed, and I want to delve into that a little bit later. But let's start with why Jon Norris is a photographer and why he loves landscape so much.
Oh, wow. That's a long story. I first started taking pictures when I was 14, so over 40 years ago now, so I'm dating myself.
Yep.
And I've always been fascinated by being outdoors. It used to be, really my passion was outdoors, hiking, climbing, that type of thing.
Sure.
And I took a camera along to record those kind of trips. And then more and more as I got out, spent time outdoors, the kind of photography slowly took over. And then I think like most people, there was a hiatus for about 15 years when my kids, who are now in their late 20s, were growing up, where all I did was take pictures of them and didn't have time for taking photos. And then I seriously got back into it about 11 years ago when we moved to Southern California, which is where I live now. Tell from my accent, I'm English originally, but haven't.
I was going to say, you don't sound like you're from Southern California.
No, I left the UK 25 plus years ago. So I had 10 years in Germany, 5 years in France. We've been here 11 years. We had a bit of a stint in the UK kind of in between, which is why the numbers don't add up. But basically, since moving to the US, I've just spent increasingly more and more time in the wilderness. It's kind of my retreat. It's my escape. I love being outdoors. And I take a camera along pretty much everywhere I go. And then as I really got into landscape photography here, I just kind of went down the rabbit hole, did more and more and more photography. I specialized primarily in taking pictures in Joshua Tree National Park.
Yep.
I visited there more than 200 times in the last, 10 plus years. Absolutely love it to bits. And I just find being outdoors in the wilderness and, the kind of situations I get myself into through hiking and backpacking and seeing things that people just don't see every day. I just find it really good for the soul. It kind of makes me complete being out there, being out in the wilderness. And, the photography has gone hand in hand with that.
Nice. And there's a few things there that I'd like to unpack a little bit more.
Please do.
So talk to me a little bit more about the time in Germany and France and so forth. Were you into photography then, or was that the hiatus period?
I still have a full-time job. My photography is my passion project, but I still work full-time. I work in the aviation business in B2B marketing. Throughout my aviation career, I did an apprenticeship as an engineer, an aeronautical engineer. I did my college training as an engineer. I then worked my way up into engineering management and then moved into product management, program management, and then latterly sales and marketing. I have just had enough of engineering and product management, program management, because, you start every project without enough time, people, or money.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse from there.
Yeah.
And so
you can blame for it not working.
And then you can blame for everything.
Yeah. Over budget, etc. Yeah.
So marketing for me was a way of kind of trying to combine my kind of creative side and doing things on my photography on the side with the kind of day job. I like that kind of creative aspect. I like meeting people, talking to people. So marketing was a kind of good fit. So that's what triggered the move. So being in aviation, lived in Toulouse for 5 years, which is where Airbus is headquartered. And then I had 2 years in Munich, southern Germany, working for another airframer that doesn't exist anymore, Fairchild Dornier. And then 4 years back in the UK with BAE Systems, a huge multinational aerospace company now. And then went to Airbus in Hamburg, northern Germany, was there for 8 years.
Yep.
And then moved within aerospace to the IFE business, in-flight entertainment business. So seat back screens in the back of aircraft seats. Moved into that and then moved to the US. And so then I've been kind of fighting this battle between myself that, day job pays the bills. But after 40 years in a corporate job, it's like, this really isn't doing it for me. And, the photography was what I really wanted to do. So that's how I really went down the rabbit hole in photography. It's why I started my photography business, started doing workshops, volunteering in the park. And, so now I kind of have this constant balance of battle with myself as to what I need to do versus what I'd rather be doing.
Yeah. Having gone through similar sort of process, including the aviation side, I used to work for an airline here for about 20 odd years. And so that aside, that battle between yourself and do I stay with corporate and the money? I can guarantee you that if the money is the important thing, keep doing it.
There's no competition.
Yeah. If money's not important to you, then go with your heart and get into photography, because there's bugger all money in landscape photography.
This is very true. It's something I've figured from myself the last 5 to 6 years running workshops and things. I think it's a different proposition doing it if you're solo and younger. But if you already have an established family and responsibilities and a house and all that fun stuff, very difficult to build enough, backing so that you can kind of proper try.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing it as my side gig, but it's tricky because there's not enough hours in the day. And if you really want to do your photography properly and hope to get it off the ground, you've got to put a lot of hours in. And if you're doing that on top of a 40-hour-a-week job, it can get a bit tiring at times.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fine if you are using it as a stress release only and
absolutely,
hobby sort of related.
Yeah.
You can still sell prints and whatever as part of that hobby, but it is kind of difficult when it starts to become such a passion that you've got to go with your heart and say, okay, well, I'm
Yeah. I mean, as it happens, things have changed, and maybe in the last few weeks, and we can get into that later, but I got huge enjoyment from the teaching aspects from running workshops. I really enjoy transferring the knowledge and giving people the skills they can then replicate, what they've learned. So I'm not the kind of workshop instructor that says, all right, put your tripod here. These are the settings, go and get on with it. Just point that way and shoot. I like to kind of really hand over techniques and things that the client, the photographer, can really take away and then repeat. If I'm teaching something like, exposure bracketing, I'm walking them through that, giving them something that's easy to comprehend. And even if they never shot in matter before, they can finish the workshop and they've got that technique they can go and use, another. So I think that's the thing that really inspired me to do the workshops is it got me out into the wilderness, and I love being out in the wild, and that is my stress relief from that job and just being off the grid. It's very nice to be in a national park when nobody can reach you and you can be backpacking in the middle of nowhere, and you literally are in the middle of nowhere. So, that's really positive. And then, the teaching was really good. I found that extremely rewarding, and people seemed to gel with my style of teaching, which was great.
Yeah. Okay, so when you talked about quitting some of the things that you are doing in terms of Instagram and your workshops, which is something that you've talked a little bit about on your social media, can you talk us through that thinking and why you've made the decisions that you've made with the business side and also that promotional side of things with your social media?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So maybe I'll do the second one first. So the kind of coming off social media. So this is something which I've been kind of thinking about for at least a year, maybe longer. So I came off Facebook probably a couple of years ago, about the same time came off Twitter. It just wasn't doing anything for me. It was using up too much bandwidth. There was just rubbish on there and didn't see any benefit from the business point of view. I always make a point of asking where people heard from me if they sign up for a workshop, and almost without exception, it's through Google search. It's not through any social media. I've always, had my own email list and have used that successfully to kind of reach out to people and reach out to existing clients. So I have kind of an alumni, as I call them, and I reach out to them once or twice a month and give them information. We do image reviews and that type of thing. And I found that hugely better, more beneficial than, relying on social media. It was always the same people on social media. It was people who knew me. It was friends. It was family. So it was nice for them to see what I was posting, but it wasn't there was no net benefit from a business point of view.
Yeah.
And then, I signed up for, Mastodon. I signed up for Blue Sky, and they didn't last very long because it was like, no, this is just more of the same, right? It's just, so I thought, okay, I'm going to double down and just focus on Instagram. And I did that for about 6 months. I put a lot of energy into it, a lot of new collateral that I was creating.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just stagnant. I hovered around 2,000 followers for years. Wasn't getting any traction there. It was sucking up a lot of time, because if you really put energy into thinking about when you're posting, what you're going to cover, you're kind of promoting prints or promoting workshops, etc., to then get, really no useful feedback or input in return, I just thought, well, this is just crazy. This is just pointless. It wasn't moving the needle on people signing up for workshops. It really wasn't doing anything at all. And then more and more, just the amount of rubbish on the Instagram platform, the bots and the crap and
the AI slop.
The AI slop. And it's just like, I just thought, okay, I'm kind of like done with this. It's like, I've tried, in the past, just like stop posting. I wish I had kind of the strength of character where I could just have the discipline not to doom scroll, but just having it makes you doom scroll. And it's like, okay, I just need out of this completely. So I took the decision just start of January. It's like, okay, finally, it's funny. I read Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism book over the holidays. And that was the last kind of nail in the coffin for Instagram. For me, it was like, I read that and went, okay, it's got to go. And there were some other things that I'll come on to in a minute, which have kind of triggered this as well. I put a post out saying, okay, end of January, I'm leaving Instagram. This is where you can find me. And now there's only 3 locations online you can find me. My website, the Discord, Landscape Photographers channel, and my Substack blog. I publish once or twice a week on Substack, and then everything which is on Substack is on my blog. So essentially, 2 of those channels are basically the same content.
Yeah, right.
And then funnily enough, I think it was just before the weekend, it was like, I can't wait till the end of the month to pull the plug. So I pulled the plug yesterday or the day before. So the Instagram account is gone. And then another thing which is kind of partially led to coming off Instagram is, so I think I mentioned, I perform workshops in Joshua Tree National Park, and the system we have in the US is that if you're a photographer and you're doing workshops in one of the national parks, you have to get a permit, and it's called a commercial use authorization, or CUA.
Yep.
So different.
We have something similar here in Australia.
Yeah, there's another system, which is if you're just a commercial photographer, for example, and you're going in to do a photo shoot,
Yep.
then you have a separate permit for that, a special use permit, which is very specific for that specific, shoot that you're going to do.
Yeah.
The CUA is really set up more for people who are doing workshops. So there's another CUA permit for people leading hikes or for backpacking or rock climbing. Climbing is massive in Joshua Tree National Park. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is the restrictions that the CUA permit holders have to take on board and comply with have been getting more and more onerous. And then what happened in the start of December, and then bearing in mind, we're supposed to submit our applications for the 2020. We should have put our applications in for our 2026 CUA by early December. We had the shutdown in the US, so all the MPS employees were not working for 45 days. They were furloughed. So everything in that process got delayed. And then unbeknownst to the photographer CUAs, the MPS changed the rules for photographers in Joshua Tree National Park. They put a heap more restrictions on, which essentially made it almost impossible to run a workshop that you could sell. No photographer is going to sign up for a workshop. For example, I do a lot of astrophotography, and the rules were such that MPS were saying that you could only run a photography workshop, an astro workshop, in one of 3 parking lots in the park.
Okay.
And they basically specifically forbid you from going anywhere near some of the kind of classical rock formations, which are synonymous with Joshua Tree and Milky Way shots. Like Arch Rock is a very famous location with the Milky Way arcing across Arch Rock. You can't do that. They gave no reasons why they were doing this.
I was going to ask whether or not they've actually said, is it because of traffic management and trying to reduce the traffic, or is it a safety thing, or what?
Yeah, they weren't clear. I mean, what they did say is that it's their policy not to discuss the reasons behind their policy changes. Apparently that's policy. Joshua Tree does suffer from over-visitation. I mean, that's clear.
Yeah, that's pretty much a given what's there.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone, the visitation, I think it topped out about 3.2 million visits a year. It's around about 3 million now. But the issue is that really from a point of view of the photographers, there's only 10 CUA photographers in Joshua Tree.
Right.
We're not like we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of photographers who come along in our workshops. I mean, in the 5 years I was operating under CUA, I never, whilst I was out on a workshop, saw another workshop taking place. We all have our preferred locations we go to. None of it overlaps. We act as very good stewards for the park. We obey leave no trace. We're practicing what we preach. We're encouraging, the photographers on our classes to do the same. These are all small workshops, maximum 3 photographers. So as a, potential impact or a reduction in over-visitation, it's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean compared to, the over kind of publicized, meteor shower. So like the Perseid meteor shower last year, after dark, when the fee station, the entrance stations are closed, hundreds, probably thousands of people come into the park and just invade. All the parking lots are full. People are double parked on the road. The road is gridlocked at 2 a.m. because they've heard that there's going to be this amazing light show, and they didn't even know what a meteor shower looks like. And then they cause a lot of damage, and that's far and away more damaging to the park than some carefully controlled photography workshops. So really disappointing decision by the park. We had a couple of meetings with the park. They rescinded on a couple of things, but essentially they really haven't moved the needle enough to make it worthwhile. So, I published a post on my blog a week ago, and, the majority of the locations that I would take people to are now off limits.
Wow. That's insane.
APS says that they're going to try and enforce these limits on visiting public as well. And for example, we always have large groups of photo club groups. They do their own kind of mini workshops, and they attend, and
but they're not commercially run, so
they're not commercially run. So, yeah, but they're not. I don't see how the Park Services is going to police this, because just to put in perspective, Joshua Tree is just under 800,000 acres.
Yeah,
bigger than the state of Rhode Island. At any one time, there may only be a couple of rangers on duty, law enforcement rangers, and they're patrolling 800,000 acres.
Yeah.
I don't see how they're going to police it. I don't see why they're clamping down on the photographers. We really haven't had a good reason why. There's never, we all conferred, and it's like, we haven't had any issues. We never had run-ins with the rangers, run-ins with the public. What's the issue? Oh, one of the other things is they banned low-level lighting. So basically no artificial light after dark.
Oh, okay.
For photography purposes.
So what about people that are camping?
Well, this is the crazy thing. I mean, the park is open 24 hours a day. So if you're anywhere near the main roads that go through the park, you've got cars going past with headlamps, which, headlights at 10,000 lumens. We're talking about, maybe 50 to 100 lumens to low-level light, rock formation that you're taking a picture of. I mean, it doesn't bear any comparison. So it seems unduly harsh to the CUA permit holders who are bringing revenue in for the park, because we have to pay for the permit.
That's it.
And then the park takes a cut of our income from the workshops. So they're kind of cutting their nose off to spite their face.
Yeah. That just seems to be a really bizarre decision. I guess I want to dig a little bit deeper into a couple of these things. One is the communication before this decision was made. What was that like? Was there any?
There wasn't any communication.
So it was just
what I'm saying. Well, no, it wasn't even that. It wasn't declared. There's a website that if you want a CUA permit, you have to go on to apply for your permit. It doesn't matter which park it is. And, you can drill down into it and you can see the rules in the fine print. But no one had directed us to say, hey, before you apply for your 2026 permit, you should go and check the rules out because they've changed. Yeah. And one of the photographers, I think, was just thought they should look at the detail and dug into it. I hadn't even got around to thinking about, okay, am I going to do workshops next year? He saw the new rules and then quickly emailed around and said, hey guys, you better go and check this out. So I don't know whether they were thinking they could just do it under the table, or whether they were thinking that people would just apply anyway. I think pretty much we had a couple of meetings with the Park Service, and, I came to the conclusion that it just didn't make sense for me to continue the workshops. I mean, daytime workshops, they banned a couple of locations. Basically, anything that's inside a campsite, you can't photograph on a workshop. You can't do workshops on any of the hiking trails. So doing things like photo walks becomes almost impossible.
Yeah, becomes prohibitive. Yeah.
So it just kind of reached a crescendo, and it's like, okay, it's time out. And I'm not saying anything. I don't want to make any kind of political comment, but it does seem that NPS is doing its best to deconstruct itself.
Yeah.
But other parks have had changes. But for example, there's nothing quite as onerous, in Death Valley, which is like 4 hours away from me. They have some other restrictions, like they have to accurately report where they're going on their workshops in advance. It's like, on this day, I'm going to go here. I'm going to have 3 people. We're going to do this, this, and this, which is fine. We could have done that. That's not difficult. But it does seem to be that the rules are determined by the superintendent of each park. So no, it wasn't discussed in advance. And then when we found out about it and kicked up some fuss and said, well, what are you going to do? They did actually have a specific call with the photographer CUAs because they'd had so much flack.
Yeah, right.
And they'd made a few concessions, but from my point of view, nowhere near enough that made it sense to continue the workshops. And I think another factor is over the last 6 to 9 months, all of us who operate in Joshua Tree have seen a downturn in bookings. It doesn't matter if you're, hiking workshops, photography, climbing. I think, people are keeping their, discretional spending down.
Yeah. I guess one of the things that sort of stands out to me is if it is about reducing traffic, then probably a fairly effective way of doing it. But I'm also interested, have you had contact with some of the other photographers, CUAs, who have also made similar decisions to yourself? Are you out there on your own, or
No, no.
just the level? Or?
No, there's two or three others I've been in close contact with, and one in particular, he does a lot of astrophotography, and he's renowned internationally, and so he has international clients that fly in specifically to do Milky Way over Arch Rock.
Yeah.
That's firmly off limit. So, like him, we're in the position now where we're going to have to refund clients that have booked workshops that we now can't deliver. So I think there will be a number of CUAs who don't operate, and I think there's others who might change what they do. It does kind of feel like the people that are kind of stewards for the park and act in the park's best interest are being punished because they can be directly addressed. And then what's being done for the over visitation, if it really is a serious concern for, if there's an environmental or wildlife concern, then close the park after dark.
Yeah.
Close the gates. I mean, the park is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And outside the hours the feast station is open, anyone can drive in. So that's what makes it feel kind of odd. It's like, well, if there's an environmental, consideration,
manage numbers properly.
Talk to us about it and get the input.
Yeah. It seems like a crazy set of decisions. I guess we have similar. It is a little bit different here again because our national parks are run on a state by state basis. Each of the 6 states, or 7 if you include the Northern Territory and ACT, or 8, basically have their own National Parks and Wildlife Service, as it's called here in New South Wales. Victoria has its own, Queensland has its own, etc. And they all have similar but distinctly different restrictions on what you can and can't do in national parks. As far as I'm aware, we don't have the same sort of traffic volume problems, but we do, there's certain parts of certain parks which are definitely over trafficked. But you definitely have, I think, a much stronger sort of relationship between most of the parks and wildlife services and the community users of the parks, and there's usually fairly good dialogue. The one exception that we've got here is in Tasmania. I know that there's been quite a bit of conversation around some of that, or the restrictions and the chasing, even down to chasing a guy, a professional photographer. As far as I'm aware, there is no question that they were trying to sell prints or whatever from their photography within the park, but they were chasing this person with fines and all the rest of it because they hadn't actually. Now, they weren't running a workshop or anything. They were just in the park as a park user taking photos with their camera, but they were just trying to sell them. And so the park was then trying to pursue them for not signing up to a CUA to be able to do commercial photography in the park. But most of the parks and wildlife services here, as far as I'm aware, they have fairly good relationships with the user communities. And I don't have a problem with restrictions on things like drones and whatever because of the wildlife concerns and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Disruption to other users of the park and so forth. But I don't get where you would come at just sort of closing down locations completely, unless it was a traffic thing. But as you say, doing that, for Astro and whatever is bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. So it all kind of, as I said, it all reached a crescendo in December, and like literally the last few days of the year, it's like, okay, I'm not going to apply for a 2026 permit. We'll see what happens during 2026. I'm still actively involved with Joshua Tree National Park. I'm a volunteer and instructor for the Joshua Tree National Park Association, which is the park's fundraising partner. They run they run the visitor centres and, the shops for the park. They provide educational resources. So I work on the educational side with their Desert Institute. Right. I volunteer on a number of their workshops. I'm still going to be teaching photography workshops on behalf of DI within the park. So we'll see what happens next year, and then see if I decide to revert to workshops in 2027. But things would have to change significantly.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say things would have to reverse quite significantly if I was going to start again.
Yeah. I was going to ask exactly that question. What do you think the future looks like, and what does it hold for you? I guess, could you move to Death Valley, I guess, for your work?
Well, I mean, it did. Those are the kind of things I was looking at. And there's also Anza Borrego Desert State Park, which is near San Diego, which is the largest California state park, which is an amazing dark sky venue. So there are other venues, but it's just, Joshua Tree was my community. I built up a lot of relationships there. It was kind of what I was known for, had a really good knowledge of the park. So I just felt that a break for a year was better than kind of pivoting and, just trying it out for another park. And, talking online on a couple of forums, I'd heard from other photographers who, do teach in Death Valley that, they have challenges there. One of the challenges is, I guess it's a bit like Yosemite. They have a lot of photographers there who are running workshop.
Yeah.
It's not just kind of 10, it's like 40, 50, in each location. And then, it's very saturated. Logistically, Death Valley is tough if you want to do workshops where, if you want to get off the beaten track and you're going to go and do, places like the racetrack, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So
that's, and I guess accommodation there is quite limited for camping.
Accommodation is very limited. I mean, a lot of the places where you want to photograph, you would, you'd be camping, you'd be wild camping. So if you're going to take a workshop and, so you need 4-wheel drive to access, you would need to probably help people with camping. So logistically, it's kind of tough.
Just that adds to the complexity of running the workshop.
Yeah. A lot of challenges that probably just go as standard in, if you're in Australia and you're in the bush, then, these things will happen automatically. But there's still a lot of reliance on tarmac in the US, and people aren't as familiar with driving off-road.
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a big off-roading community here, obviously, and I know there is in the US, and there's quite a bit of crossover with, the certainly probably more on the video side, but also on the photography side, there's quite a bit of crossover. There's not many people or places where going and doing wild camping is a thing. It's not that there's no one, but it's fairly specialised and fairly low numbers from what I've seen, the research that I've done here in Australia, because I've looked at similar sorts of things, but there's certainly other alternatives to necessarily wild camping in certain areas. But as you say, if you're going into remote places, then it becomes your only option. So
and then there's a big burden on you for like duty of care.
Oh, absolutely. Your insurance premiums and everything go up like that. Yeah.
And just making sure that everyone is safe and sound and well fed. And, it just, I mean,
and hydrated, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I do overland as well. So I enjoy off-road travel, and it's fine if I'm just looking after like myself and my family. But if you might have people who've booked up with your workshop and you don't know in advance, you can tell them how it's going to be, but you don't really know what their experience is of overland travel or the backcountry or backpacking or hiking.
Yeah.
I've had a number of backpacking trips where I've been the lead, and people say they can happily walk, 10 miles in the wilderness, and then you meet them and you go, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've just decided, luckily for me, I don't have to rely on the income I derive from photography. From that point of view, it isn't an impact. It's just more I was building up. My hope was that my photography would build up and I'd find a way of making enough from it that I could kind of view, over the year. I'm in my late 50s, like ramping down day job and moving over to photography. But
Right.
that ain't going to happen this year.
Yeah. So I guess, how do you stay inspired with that goal of shifting more towards passion than...
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm going to do is going back to what I did before I started doing my workshop, which is plan more photo trips, mainly solo. I might do some hiking and photography trips with my wife as well. She's a keen hiker. And just go back to visiting national parks and not needing to teach, but just get back to being more creative with my photography. I noticed over the last couple of years, my kind of creativity and output had waned slightly.
Interesting.
I think because I was putting so much energy into the workshops and online mentoring, and I was kind of, what my style is, I don't like to shoot too much if I'm leading a workshop.
Yeah.
I want to be really
It does take
actively...
you away from the point of the workshop, which is...
Yeah, I want to be kind of actively involved in the client and making sure they're getting everything they can get from it.
The client, the experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I can't do two things at the same time. So if I'm, I can't focus properly on my photography and teach someone else, because then neither gets the right amount of energy or attention.
Yeah.
So, that's why I kind of made it. It's like one or the other. It's like if I went for a photo hike with my family, they would be keen to know whether I'm going for photography or hiking.
Yeah, right.
They don't want to watch me stand around taking pictures for an hour.
Yeah, but if you're actually going to go out, just enjoy the experience as opposed to sitting down and analysing a scene.
No, exactly. I mean, because you know what it's like. If you're doing that, then that's snapshots. I'm not really kind of thinking it through or just taking it all on board and enjoying the moment. To be honest, making the decision now, I'm looking forward to this year into being more creative, getting out there, doing more, photography for me. I was gifted a medium format film camera this year.
No,
I'm really keen to start using more. So I've got a Mamiya RZ67, which I haven't you put 4 rolls of film through it yet, but I'm really, really enjoying playing with that, which is really cool. And getting back into using film and shooting black and white with color filters and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So
Talk a little bit about that. Are you doing your own development, or are you...
Oh no, I'm using a lab. I'm more focused on it from the kind of the creative side and finding the images, taking the images.
Yeah.
I could see in time that I might get into developing and printing, but I think that's a kind of step 2 rather than step 1.
Yes.
I think, step 1, as I said, is really getting out there and using, this medium format camera in the field, which has been a lot of fun. You certainly get a lot of people staring at you.
Yeah.
When you get this old box, this Mamiya 6.7 out. I mean, it's nothing like a full frame camera, but it's big enough. People can see that it's something different, and you got it on a tripod, and you're being more considered about it, and it slows you down. So that's a lot of fun. Just that kind of slowing down and playing with
the whole process of film, where you don't get instant feedback about what you've just shot. You don't know whether or not you've captured it 100% correct, unless you are really up on your calculations and your math, and you got that right.
Yeah, I had some teething problems. So the first couple of rolls of film, I fumbled getting them out of the film back. And so I got some light leakage, and it's all the kind of stuff that you learn the hard way. And then I don't have a lens hood at the moment on the Mamiya lens. So last time I took a roll of film, I was getting glare on the lens, and it's like, normally you don't even think about that with a conventional camera, because all the lenses come with hoods. So I've got to find a hood, or I've got to find some kind of shade I can rig if I'm aware that I might be getting some some of those kind of things happening. But it's good, and I just want to go out and just take photos and be able to just shoot for me. And I think that's what I've been missing as well, is that kind of overly focused on the client, which you need to be, but less focused on my own photography. And also, I want to do more writing. I've really enjoyed being on Substack and increasing my output. So, I've done, I don't know, 105 posts now, which has been good. I've met some interesting people. It's quite an interesting photography community on Substack. A lot of black and white, a lot of film photographers, a lot of other creatives in parallel or different, genres of creativity. So that's been good. Yeah, I mean, I was very despondent at the end of December, but the holidays got me kind of seeing things a bit more clearly. So I feel a bit more upbeat about it now.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. The process of thinking more about your personal photography than thinking about making money out of it and so forth, I think that is almost always a worthwhile experience. I know when I was doing some workshops, that focus shifts away from your own photography, as you said, and being able to actually start to review and think about what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you want to change that is, I think, a very refreshing time, and something that just about every photographer, even if they're not doing workshops, probably should do, is actually think about why they're doing the work that they're doing and whether or not they want to continue doing that, or what it is that they want to tweak, what do they want to experiment with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I made a conscious decision to do was I had to take a little notebook with me, because obviously you don't have any metadata with a film camera. So I'm making my own metadata. So I'm doing the technical stuff. So it's like, I shot it with this, these were the exposure settings, what filter did I use, exposure compensation. But I'm also trying to start capturing and writing what my intent was when I took the shots. Yeah. And I'm trying to almost like forcing myself to think about it. Because you know what it's like when you're shooting digital, it's just too easy. I mean, you get the instant feedback.
Yeah. Well, you've got the instant feedback. You've got all the metadata, so you don't have to think about any of that. You don't think about it,
But you certainly don't. I don't think you really think about the intent at the time. I mean, you're not like writing it down. And it's almost like, well, I need to write this metadata down in description anyway, because otherwise, as a 120 film, you only get 10 shots. But if you don't write a description of what the image is, okay, three Joshua trees with a gritstone, boulder to the right. You can't pair the metadata with the image.
Yeah.
So that kind of really kind of old-fashioned, in inverted commas, way of doing it has been really fulfilling. It's something I want to do, and I think I can see it almost the kind of intent, writing notes on intent, and what I was thinking, feeling at the time, I think will actually become a bigger part of the photography.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier to kind of then reflect on the whole process. So I'm really excited to do that. I'm gonna be doing more astro, but do more daytime photography as well, and seeing more of the parks. I mean, we're spoiled on the west coast of the US. In California alone has 9 national parks, and Oregon, Washington. If you get further north, then you're into Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So there's a lot to see. I can see me doing more road trips, which will be great. I really enjoy road trips and just going away from it and going to explore and seeing what I see.
I'm interested in what you're doing, particularly with the film. Are you digitizing and then doing edits in Photoshop or a photo editor after the fact, or are you relying
that's the plan. I haven't edited anything yet, but the lab I'm using is a place called the Darkroom in San Clemente, which is about 20 minutes from me. That they've been a lab for 40 years plus. I mean, they do a really good service, fast turnaround.
Yeah.
So they do the developing, and then you get the negs, and then you can tell them what size scan you want. So what you get back is a digital. You have a digital file for each of your negatives and the original negatives. So I haven't started playing with editing the digital. I am keen to have a go. I'm curious to see whether I might like to put the negative on a light box and then, get a raw image.
Get a raw from there,
and then get a raw from there, and then like manipulate, turn the negative, play with the tone curve and flip it and get a positive from the negative.
Yeah.
I'm keen to try some slide film, some positive film as well, color positive, because, back in day, I loved Kodachrome.
Yeah.
And so, I'm keen to play around with that as well. So I think the editing side will be interesting to see how that works. And I think I'll kind of work that out in my system before I then think about developing. I'm sure my wife would love for me to announce that I want a darkroom at home and all that entails.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the reasons why I won't do film photography is I've still got my original SLR. It's a Minolta XG1 from back in, I think it was about 1980 or something that I got that. And I haven't put a roll of film through that for a good 30 odd years. And the reason being, aside from the cost of film and is I'd like to have the control of the darkroom, because I was never satisfied putting stuff through labs with what you'd get back. Yes, you could ask for tweaks and whatever, but then that started to increase the costs, etc. as well. And yeah, I'd like to do it, but only if I did the process end to end. But again, having a dark room and somewhere where you can actually do all of that, and then dealing with the chemicals and the smells and all the rest of those things that come along having a dark room of your own, it's kind of something that I've said, no, I'm probably never going to do this, so I'm not going to bother.
Yeah, I can see that as being a retirement project, getting into developing and printing.
Yeah, nice. Do you think it's important
to retire?
Do you think it's important for you to have goals in your photography?
Oh, absolutely. I think being a recovering engineer, I'm pretty analytical. So I kind of finish most years by kind of looking back at the goals I've set myself for the previous year or the current year as it is, and then what am I going to do next year? So I always have a little goal setting exercise. And I find that really helps. I mean, typically I aim too high. What do they say? If you aim for the stars, but was it shoot for the stars, land on the moon, or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah.
But I think having some goals for me, I find really helps. I like to stretch things. So, I've done things like I'm really keen on using wide angle lenses. So one year, one of my challenges was use my telephoto 100 to 500 mil and take more intimate landscapes. I tend to do a lot of wide vista stuff. Astro, of course, is very wide. So I do like challenges like that. And, maybe sometimes I'll take a different lens out, one I don't normally use, and just try and force myself to use that lens. And it's like, well, why don't I use it? What is it that it can or can't do? That am I missing a trick here?
Yeah.
One of the other things I'm keen to try this year is, I'm showing my age now, bird photography. So I've become a bit of a birder through some of the classes I've done at Joshua Tree, but a couple of my clients are really proficient, very good bird photographers. And I'm really keen to give that a go.
Really succeeded with, particularly bird in flight, trying to get a...
I'm not sure I have the patience for it. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like landscapes, is the landscape pretty much isn't going anywhere.
That's it.
And I can wait for the weather.
You can wait around for the light.
Yeah, I mean, because at least you can kind of see it coming. Bird photography, it's like, this looks really hard to me, and I'm sure it is. But so, maybe try a couple of different genres. Before landscapes, I did a lot of urban photography, abstract photography when I was living in Europe. So maybe bird photography, wildlife is the next thing. I can't see me moving completely away from landscapes. No. I could do with a few more mountains in my life. I miss the mountains.
Right.
Or maybe I should start doing some seascapes, as I only live 10 miles from the Pacific. It's funny, I'll drive 2 to 3 hours to go to the desert, but I won't drive 20 minutes to the coast.
Wow.
Which, for some people, where they say, well, that's mad.
Yeah.
So maybe some more coastal images will be in my future.
As a passionate seascaper, I'm on their side thinking,
Oh, no, absolutely. It's funny because every time I go to the coast, I'll go for a walk with my wife along the coast, and it's like, why don't we come here more often?
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know. I think I I got the bug of going to the deserts, and
I can certainly see the attraction, and particularly with a place like Joshua Tree, Death Valley and whatever being almost on the doorstep as well. I can definitely see the attraction of doing that. But I'd definitely mix it up. One of the things you talked a bit about using wide angle for astro, and I get that. I don't know if you've actually used the 500 mil and pointed that at the sky, but that's an interesting experience in itself. And rather than taking the broader vista with a landscape sort of foreground, focusing in on a bit of deep space.
So that's another rabbit hole that I've partially deliberately kept myself away from, is deep space astrophotography. I would find it fascinating. I have indulged and bought a tracker.
You're not far away from doing it then.
No. So that would permit me to put the two things together. So it probably is another thing that I'll kind of play with. This particular tracker I've got, once you've done all the alignment that you need to do, it will actually, you can tell it, once it's found it where it is, you can give it a coordinate in space or a constellation in space for it to go and look at, and it will move to that point. So it's a bit complicated. I've only played with it a couple of times because it was one of these things I thought I bought at a weak moment, and I thought I really want to try this because I have had a couple of clients who've come on Astro workshops and said, "Hey, I've got a tracker. Can you help me use it?"
Yeah. Right.
And most people are using the little move, shoot, move, which is quite a simple affair, works very well, and it's easy to use. This thing I've got is a bit of a monster and takes more time to set up, but I'll definitely play with that. But then, if you're going to go above 50 mil focal length, you really need a tracker because otherwise you're just not going to get anything.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I've got a lot of photo projects coming up.
Does, definitely. It sounds like you're going to have a full year.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about photography. It's like a never-ending box of things to kind of explore and play with. Infrared sounds like great. Should I convert one of my cameras to infrared? Do I, change one of the cameras to full spectrum for astro?
Yeah.
It's almost limitless in terms of some of the potential and what you can do. So certainly not bored with photography. I'm not going to give it up and hang the cameras up and not use them.
Fair enough. What do you think success is in your photography? For
me, I think I'd be lying if I said I don't like to get feedback and positive reaction to my photos. So I did my first one and only exhibition last year in 29 Palms near Joshua Tree, and it was basically a photo exhibition. I did a sort of session. I did this talk to a number of camera clubs in the area. It was called 7 Years in the Desert. So it's kind of a hat tip to Heinrich Hauer and 7 Years in Tibet, but it was 7 years in the desert. And it was like my journey into landscape and desert photography. And, the talk at the camera clubs was all kind of my progression to show, here's some really bad images that I started taking. It really was an example of how your photography can't help but get better if you take 50,000 pictures of the same type of landscapes.
Yeah.
And so the exhibition was kind of, here's my favorite 20 images that I've taken over the last 7 years. And, that was really, really good. So, but mainly I do still, I take pictures for me. I think for me, success is me coming away with a photograph or, a clutch of photos in a year that I'm really pleased with. And I would rather have the kind of the feedback or the satisfaction from a couple of people buying prints than 10,000 likes on Instagram. Not that I ever got 10,000 likes on Instagram. I'd be lucky if it was more than 100. So I think that's what success is for me. I mean, the photography, I take pictures for me. So I have never taken a picture because I think it's what would be expected. I take a picture and I frame a scene because it means something to me at that time, and I take the image. And if I come back with an image that, I revisit 3 months, 6 months later, and I still really, really like it, then for me, that's success.
What's the most memorable experience you've had when doing photography?
Oh, that's a good question. I think some of the most memorable experiences have been being out with friends or clients, taking images when things have just, fallen into place.
Yeah, right.
Being out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness in Joshua Tree, a couple of miles, 2-3 miles away from the nearest road. So you really are in the middle of nowhere with no one around you.
Yeah.
It's definitely quiet. It's just no noise whatsoever. Occasional coyote off in the distance. And then, maybe it's, the weather changing, clouds dispersing and getting kind of crystal clear skies and getting amazing, Milky Way or Star Trail shot. But I think for me, it's the significance of seeing other people experience that.
Yeah, right.
Who maybe haven't been there before, haven't been in that situation, maybe, it's their first astro workshop or they've played about with it themselves, but then they've come along to a workshop and they've managed to get a picture that they're really, really pleased with. It was lovely. This holiday season, I got a greeting card from one of my clients, workshop clients, a photographer who's moved into astro. And the card is a picture of hers that she printed, which is one of her pictures that she took on one of my workshops.
Oh, nice.
And it was just that's the kind of thing which is like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, because the significance of it is I helped you get your head around how you do this as a technique. You created this amazing image and then you shared it with me. That's like perfect.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. Everyone's had a horror story to tell from their photography. What's yours?
I think I'm going to say it's a horror story. I did get an occasion which scared the hell out of me as I was in the middle of nowhere, way off any of the trails and away from the road in Joshua Tree. And I was shooting astro, and I had heard a whole bunch of coyotes off in the distance. And then there was obviously a pack of them. And normally they don't come anywhere near people. They stay away. They're really not a threat to humans. And then it went dead quiet for about half an hour. And when they next made a noise, it sounded like they were 10 feet from me.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they probably weren't. They were probably 50, 100 feet, but
Yeah.
It was significantly louder than the last time I'd heard them. And it really rattled me to the point where I just packed up and marched as fast as I could back to the truck and got in. So that was my kind of scariest moment. We do have mountain lions in the park, but they chase the bighorn sheep and they're way out in the middle of nowhere, like really way out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness. The closest I got to a mountain lion is seeing paw prints in camp in the morning.
Yeah, the only time I've ever seen one outside of a zoo or park setting like that is in Banff in Canada. And it wasn't in the streets of Banff, but it was on one of the hills on the outskirts. And you could see it out stalking something or other. And there was a whole bunch of people at the bottom of the hill sort of pointing up and looking at it. But it would have been a good 300-400 meters away. Didn't manage to get the long lens out and get a shot in time.
No.
But that's the only time I've ever seen a mountain lion.
Yeah. No, Joshua Tree at night is a pretty, in inverted commas, safe place. I mean, the thing that's most likely to injure you is, you'll back up into a cactus.
Yeah.
And the Joya cactus are barbed and they're vicious. I mean, you need needle nose pliers to pull the spines out if they get into you. But you learn the hard way very quickly that you always look when you're reversing where you're going.
Yeah.
And you don't kneel down unless you can shine a light on the ground and see what's down there.
Yeah.
That's the kind of biggest concern when you're outdoors. But in terms of animals, I mean, we have 9 species of rattlesnakes, 15 species of cactus. But the rattlesnakes, you almost never see them.
Yeah.
They're more scared of you. They're not interested in getting anywhere near you, so they stay away.
Yeah. And people say Australia's a dangerous place to visit.
Grant, Australia is a dangerous place to visit. I mean, you've got crocodiles, you've got stonefish, box jellyfish,
Yeah, but I don't know. I've never.
trapdoor violence.
Yeah, the funnel webs are probably the worst in terms of spiders. But again, if you're not poking around under rocks and bits of wood and whatever, you don't feel them.
I mean, it's the same. Most people who get stung or get
Yeah,
snaked
they're messing with.
by snakes, they're putting inside a crack in a rock.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
You don't.
It was funny. Many years ago, when I was 18, I spent 3 months up in the Northern Territory, in and around Darwin, and spent a lot of time kind of driving around in this battered old car, and went out to Kakadu, and it was quite an eye opener seeing all the wildlife warnings, and went to a saltwater croc farm.
Yeah.
And swam with the fresh waters as well. That was quite interesting. And my sister-in-law lives in Brisbane, so she was in Sydney for a long time and in Tasmania. So I'd heard a few animal horror stories.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly safe personally. I've lived here for 61 years and it's been totally fine.
Yeah, I think us Europeans are just soft.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly the Poms. I can say that.
Exactly.
My wife's a Pom. Anyway, we probably should move into a couple of questions that I ask just about everyone.
Yeah, sure.
How do you push past creative blocks and overcome challenges in your photography?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a few years ago, I kind of came up with this kind of adage, this kind of quote I have, which tries to get me into kind of a flow state, which is explore, experience, create. So when I go out, particularly if I'm somewhere new or if I'm not really feeling it, my camera stays in my backpack, and I will just explore, and I'll hike and I'll walk a trail without really any intention of taking pictures.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of explore stage. And then what I find is in doing that, you then get into the kind of experience stage where you just let your senses take on board what there is. And I typically find within 15 minutes, half an hour of doing that, I then get naturally into more of a flow state. And that's where I find create kind of starts.
Yeah, all right.
So I pretty much, that's pretty much my vehicle into creating if I'm just not feeling it. I mean, other times you'll go out and you instantly see something, a camera straight out, and you don't need to kind of force it. And then the way I look at it is if you just explore and you, in the end, you don't take any images, you still had a great day being out in the wilderness. Right. Any day out in the wilderness beats being at home or being in an office. So,
totally.
It's still a good day out. Doesn't happen too often. And the other thing I'll try and do is just to keep things, as I mentioned it earlier, is just try different things. So, that lens that you haven't used for 2 years, before you sell it, okay, make yourself try and use it, try something different, give yourself some restrictions, try and be a bit more creative, go and shoot something different, go and shoot somewhere new. But fortunately, I've not had to kind of the photography blues too much. It's not really a thing that impacts me.
Yeah, nice.
But I think it's because I think my view on that is if you're not lucky enough to be out frequently taking photos, so that your kind of opportunity to shoot is 1 or 2 trips a year, the pressure on you to come back with something is absolutely immense.
Yeah.
If I go to Joshua Tree 20, 30 times a year, which I do, and one trip I don't shoot anything, it's no big deal because I know I'm going to be back in a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of changes your mindset completely. And, people have asked me, it was actually Matt Payne who asked me, I know he's been on your show recently. It was Matt who asked me, well, don't you get bored of going to the same place? And I said, absolutely not, because every trip is different. You go to a different place, different trail, different weather conditions, different things you see, different frame of mind. I've been to Joshua Tree 200 plus times now and never been bored.
Interesting. Given your shift away from social media, where do you see photography's place in society?
I mean, I think photography is still quite an amazing art form. So it kind of in parallel is where do you see art's place, however you define art, whatever the genre is of art in society. I think it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be art, but creativity. I think for me, I would go completely round the twist if I didn't have a creative outlet.
Mm-hmm.
I can do analytical stuff all day, all week at work, but I need that creative outlet to kind of fill the other half of my brain up.
Right.
And so I think creativity is hugely important. And I think the impact on society of reducing that amount of creativity, it's like and allowing things to be created by AI slop, because that seems to be the phrase du jour. Is a really negative thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think social media, I don't think it's always going to be kind of the be all and end all. And I hope I made the right decision moving away, that it'll just free up a lot of headspace and time to do more creative stuff, which I think will be beneficial. And, I think for the younger generation, I imagine I've got two daughters in their late 20s, and they won't like me saying that because that makes them sound like they're almost 30. Mid-20s and mid to late 20s. They're not that bothered about social media anymore. They've come off a lot of social media. They do a lot of creative, they're photographers, they do needlecraft, they do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And they're seeking more authenticity. So I think what I'm seeing is that more and more push and social media becoming more just slop and garbage.
Yep.
There's this kind of increased move to more authentic creativity and other outlets. People doing zines, doing handcrafts, that type of thing, I think is increasing. So I don't know if that's certainly the kind of the world I'm seeing through Substack and what I read and see shared on Substack. There's a lot of huge amounts of creativity and people looking for community and relationships in real life and not just social media.
Yeah.
So hopefully, there'll be that place for photography as one of those art forms, one of those creative outlets, and that it'll rebalance some of the people's view of life and what's important.
Yeah.
I'm an incredibly optimistic person, so maybe I'm just being naive.
Well, yeah, I think from a commercial photographer's perspective, there's a number of areas like product photography, etc., where jobs are threatened. Definitely,
Yep.
They've probably already gone in some spheres because marketing managers are out there to save money and produce their materials as cheaply as possible. And so if they don't have to hire a model, they don't have to hire a photographer, they don't have to hire somebody to edit and pull all of that together, and they can just type a few words into a keyboard, they're going to do it. I think from a societal perspective, a broader societal perspective, most people don't care where an image was taken or how it was taken. But they do, I think, value authenticity where they, in most cases, where they can identify, okay, well, that's computer generated, so why would I value it? Whereas they go, okay, well, this person has actually spent a bit of time and effort in going somewhere. And I don't know whether that's contradictory or not, whether or not they care how the image has been created. I think they do value the fact that a human is actually, and that it's real. And I suspect that probably does end up giving photographers that are doing landscape in particular, and and other professional angles, wedding photography. I mean, okay, you might want a fantasy background or a background that is computer generated for certain images, but most people are going to want to make sure that what's captured is the people and the wedding party that's there, as opposed to
the emotions of the day, and the
as opposed to
and
something
character.
wasn't there or isn't real. You know,
Yeah.
That event style photography is about capturing what happened at that event, and so there's areas of photography that I don't think will ever die simply because, yes, you could use AI to enhance real estate photography, but somebody's still got to go there and take a shot of that room or that apartment or the building or whatever it is that you're doing, because otherwise you're not advertising what's actually there. I don't have a problem if you've got an empty apartment, for example, and somebody has asked you to shoot that and then asked you to add furniture and whatever to the shot so that people can visualize what it would look like with furniture in it. I don't really have a problem with that in using AI to do something like that, but you can't get rid of the fact, well, here's where the walls are, here's where the windows are, here's where the doors are. You've got to capture that. And so there's certain areas where you're still going to have somebody go out and visit a place and capture what's actually there, even if you then later enhance it.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think all the talk about AI, it's very easy to kind of think of it black and white and it's going to destroy everything, where, as you said, it's a lot more nuanced. There's some amazing things that AI can do, which is a real time saver. So, for example, I did a work call yesterday and I was leading the call for an hour or so with 50 other people on listening, giving a presentation, listening to feedback, answering questions. There's no way I could have taken notes whilst I was doing that.
Yeah.
But I had Notion doing AI notes in the background. As soon as I finished the call, I got a transcript, which was pretty spot on. It gave me a summary. And 5 minutes after the end of the call, I sent the minutes out of the meeting.
Yep.
Now, that is a really useful use of AI. I mean, it's like, wow, I was seriously impressed. But the kind of Gen AI slop, no, okay, forget about it. And,
type a prompt in and give me an image. It just doesn't do it for me.
I mean, I think, we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping that this, this kind of authenticity and hopefully people seeing value in authenticity. And it's a bit like this kind of hark back to analog and, vinyl coming back and real books and, handmade things like, I've seen some zines are absolutely beautiful because they're like handmade and hand bound and things like that. Yeah. I think, there's some artistry in there that can't be replaced by AI. And I think a lot of it it's down to you. I mean, I'm thinking myself as a photographer, if I'm getting satisfaction doing what I'm doing, taking images for myself, and I'm enjoying looking at them, editing them, etc., doesn't matter if someone can recreate an image, something similar with an AI prompt.
No,
whoever did the creation, it hasn't got the sense of satisfaction and creativity out of doing it that I got from it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's interesting. We're 1 month in from as of yesterday into the social media ban for under 16s here in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an article that I read yesterday about the change in some of the kids are now being more active, going outside more, doing things that they probably wouldn't have done if they were sitting there looking at TikTok or whatever it is that they were, Snapchat. I don't even know what other social media the kids these days are using,
And that's a really bold move of the Aussies to come up with that. It'd be really interesting to see how
how that plays out.
How it plays out and whether other people are going to try it.
Yeah. For others in that group, probably won't change anything because they'll find other means of doing it, whether they, falsify their birth date or, I know there were some kids out there that had actually used a photo of their mum or their dad to trick the social media platform into doing the photo ID thing, So, there's ways and means around it, and those that want to do it and stay on will do that. But I think for those that are more accepting of the ban and saying, okay, well, this is actually a good thing, they're supported by their parents and whatever, you'd probably find that they will be like you were talking about, the guys that are into film and vinyl and analog media are probably going to move more towards that and away from, the normal social media that everyone else consumes.
Yeah, absolutely.
What that means.
Let's hope.
When they're all adults and able to get on to whatever social media, you probably find they won't want to.
That would be, an amazing outcome if it does.
Yeah, as I say, I still think there's a strong pull for them to communicate, and knowing, having 3 daughters that are now one of them's not, so I better not put her in that category, but they're in their 30s. They went through that social media, sort of, this is how you communicate, and it's all in text, and nobody actually rings and talks to one another and all the rest of it. But it's interesting when they do get together face to face, the conversations are quite different to when, they're sitting there texting one another, because you've got the nuance of seeing or hearing the stresses on certain words and phrases and whatever.
Yeah, and just things like that, body language and just being able to interact and see. You can see if someone's being authentic or real, or they're being sarcastic.
They're cues that you just don't get from text communication. And, they've now, I think, realised the value of those visual cues and the things that, or visual and audio cues that actually give you a bit more nuance than what a text message would give you,
Yeah, absolutely.
Last couple of questions. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
Oh, from a photography point of view?
Doesn't have to be. Yeah, sure.
I think the best people, I think one of the best bits of advice I got, and it was from a work environment, was whether you think you can do something or you can't do something, you're probably right.
Yep.
And, the kind of context of that was you only need to be 1 page ahead in the instruction book than who you're talking to.
Yeah.
So basically, the way I took that is just, if you want to go and do something, just get on and do it. I really don't believe in the word impossible. That I've kind of reinvented myself 3 or 4 times throughout my adult life. And, I think you can do that. Worst bit of advice. Worst bit of advice was a friend who's no longer a friend once advised me that I shouldn't date my now wife, 29 years. So there was clearly some side to why he was telling me that. And one of the best decisions I ever made in my life was marrying my wife, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Don't let anyone tell you who you should or shouldn't go out with.
Yeah,
unless you're making really bad decisions.
Yeah, but that it's your right to make good and bad decisions,
Exactly.
and then you can only blame yourself. But because you don't learn from it if you don't make it. That's that. Don't they say that's how you become wise?
Exactly.
You've made all the mistakes you possibly can do, and that makes you wise.
Yeah, and that's very good advice. All right, are there any photographers that I need to be talking to on the podcast?
Oh my word! I wasn't kind of prepared for that question.
That's okay. Just one or
So
two.
the names that immediately spring to mind, you've already, I think, and I've seen a couple of them have been on your podcast.
Mhm.
I'm drawing a blank. I can maybe send you some names by email, but that probably isn't very helpful.
No, that's not a problem. That's fine. I normally ask this question so that people will have the ability to go and find these other people as well and find them themselves. But that's cool. My last question is one that I have asked everyone on the podcast so far, and it's quite a divisive issue. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I do, as long as we're talking ham and pineapple with plenty of cheese.
Sure, we can talk that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with fruit on pizza.
Yeah, no, that's again good advice. Anyway, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today, John. It's been absolutely wonderful spending some time with you and getting to know you better. I know you laid out where people can find you a little bit earlier in the podcast, but just give them another rundown so people can find you. Where are you on the internet so people can find out what you're up to?
Yeah, so with my now much reduced digital footprint, best place to find me is on my website, which is Jon Norris Photo. And that's John spelt correctly, JONNORRIS photo.com. I'm also on Discord, the Landscape Photographers Discord channel. There's a good place to interact with people. or on my Substack, which is called Explore Landscapes. You can find me there. So thanks, Grant, for the opportunity to be on the podcast. It's been great talking to you. I think we had a really good chat. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, cheers. I thoroughly enjoyed it too, John. Thank you very much for being part of the show.
Okay, talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Have you ever looked at your social media and thought about leaving? Leave a comment below. I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests on upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com, along with prints, photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Photo, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it really helps the podcast to be heard. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.